Alrighty. Hello, everybody out there in Action Land. I guess that's what we'll call it for now. I'm here today again on another Skype call. I'm in the deepest dungeons of Sherman Oaks, and my guest, Anthony DeLongis, is somewhere in Los Angeles in a secret hiding location, right?
Well, how am I going to get people to come train at Rancho Vidal? No, the secret hiding location.
Well, it makes it.
I'm not.
Didn't you know when you make it exclusive, people want to go. You get more people. Didn't you know that?
Oh, it's
I was trying to
exclusive,
hype it
all
for
right.
you.
Yeah.
Anthony, welcome. How you been?
Thanks. I've been good. Been managing to keep busy. Had a couple of parts replaced. That feel like I've given me back 10 or 15 years worth of. I got my footwork back. I'm back on my horse. I had to have a hip replacement this year.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Oh,
47 years of jumping around, and we had some degeneration of the joint, and it was becoming intrusive. So I found the guy, that all my buddy Simon Ree and stuff like that goes to this guy. He's anyway, it turned out really great. Like I said, I've been back to the martial arts and sword training and stuff for, oh golly, the last 3 months almost. I had this at the end of April after a slight delay due to COVID, which is kind of the new normal. But and then they were making me wait to get back on my horses, But I've been back on my horses for about 6 weeks, and that makes me feel really good.
it's funny because people don't realize, and this is what I tell a lot of younger people, if you like, that when you do constantly, you mentioned 45 years or 47 years of doing this, when you constantly keep banging things, things will break eventually. So you got to be gentle on certain parts of your body.
Well, yeah, well, yeah. A career in this business is it's a marathon, not a sprint for most people. And as you well know, we're constantly reinventing ourselves, and we keep adding to our skill set, to have more versatility. So, I mean, in my case, I started in Shakespeare at the Old Globe in San Diego. I played Iago twice, and then I started doing film and TV work. And all the while, I've been working on my martial arts. I've been doing bladed weapons almost 50 years now, in a variety of different styles, from Ralph Faulkner doing European swordplay to Dan Inosanto I was with for over a decade with Filipino work. And now I've been studying under Kaiso Toshishiro Obata in Shinkendo, which is Japanese sword, near and dear to both of us, for, oh golly, about almost a dozen years now. So one of my litanies is, if I'm not getting better, I'm just getting older. And I find that keeping learning new things and honing my skills and adding to them keeps life interesting, and it also opens up opportunities. Yeah, I train. I created action for LA Opera for 20 years, from 1985 when they first started to 2005. And boy, have I got some stories from there. That was
Well,
kind of interesting.
we'll get into those in a second.
Oh, well,
We'll get into those. But what I want to ask you first is where did you start? What made you want to do this?
are you talking about this Hollywood, or do this as in show business, as in acting?
Well, I think the first thing that gets you into the door, in other words, what was it that made you get into it? Was it the Hollywood portion of it? Was it the acting? Was it the martial arts? What was it that got you started on the journey on the path that you're on now?
No, it was definitely the acting. And to me, it's always about the acting because it's about the storytelling. Whether, my dialogue is verbal, it's hard to beat Shakespeare, or whether it's physical. And of course, some of my favorite roles, including two guest stars on Highlander, where, I had the opportunity to provide, but, to combine the two. I still have, a couple of my favorite lines. One was season 3 on Blackmail, where I don't know if we improvised that line or if they'd written it, but it was like, the first time I've ever seen a lawyer need a gun to rob somebody. Anyway, yeah, that's a good line. I'm gonna remember that one. But no, I started doing theater in high school, and I really, oh, I was very physically inept, incapable, and I was trying to make some changes in that point. And I did a play called Tea House of the August Moon. And I thought, oh, I could go out and be a villager or something. I ended up getting the lead, the part that Marlon Brando played in the movie. And it kind of, I'd been hooked ever since. It is both the easiest and the hardest thing I've ever done, and it still is. I love it when when all is going well and you've done your homework and it gives you the courage to go beyond what you've planned. When inspiration strikes you, you have the courage to let it run for a while, and I know you know exactly what I mean.
Hmm.
You do your work, but you still, it's very often I liken it to riding a horse, where you've got this 1,100-pound ally, but he's still a wild animal, and you're kind of going, oh, well, we didn't do that in rehearsal, but it feels pretty good, so I'm going to let this run for a while.
It does sound like the movie industry, actually. It is that 300-pound, 400-pound horse that you're constantly trying to ride, and it keeps wanting to buck you.
Oh, it's never moving beast beneath your feet. If you want to talk about Hollywood, Hollywood
Totally.
comes a later. I started in theater and was doing theater in San Diego, and I would work the Amundsen with first Richard Chamberlain and Cyrano, and then Charlton Heston and Macbeth, and then I started doing a little bit of TV, and not nearly as often as I would have liked. That's also when I started teaching too. So between the two things, I kept learning, I kept advancing, and I kept managing to earn a check. So that's that.
So you said something a minute ago. You said you was kind of like physically. You said I think you said the word inept or like not. So what made you? How did you get into martial arts and stunts and all that type of stuff and sword work?
My first martial art was well, I started with wrestling in high school. I was just about to graduate, and I was not very physically coordinated or anything physical at all. And I started lifting some weights to try to make some changes. And I went out for wrestling, and I didn't know anything, but I was strong. I could grab you and hang on, and that started things. But then my freshman year, I went out for wrestling, and some guy in the team pinned my leg and body slammed me and dislocated my hip. Actually, the one that lasted
That's
me
the one.
50
I
years.
told you. I
Yeah, that
told
was the
you.
one.
That's the one,
Yeah.
isn't it? See, I
Yeah,
went way
yeah,
back then.
so that started it all off. But and they said, well, you're going to be a cripple all your life and walk with a limp. I said, you don't tell me, I tell you. And I was introduced to Maestro Ralph Faulkner, who was a two-time Olympian and sword master to the stars, and he had also had a leg injury. And they told him he could either do fencing or he could row. And he said that was like watching paint dry. So he went on to become, as I said, an Olympian. And he did, from the original Prisoner of Zenda to The Court Jester and many, many movies in between. He opened his heart and his studio to me. So I trained with him for over a dozen years. And from there, I went to Taekwondo, but I was never that great a kicker. And I kind of went, oh boy, I'm really unbalanced in my art. So from there, I heard about Dan Inosanto, and then I trained with him. The two great teachers in my life were Ralph Faulkner and Dan Inosanto, and they kind of inform my work to this very day. And now to that, I've added, my work in Shinkendo and Japanese swords. So
Mhm.
it's been I'm always kind of growing. And it's funny that when I teach, I tell people there are weapon-specific adjustments that maximize the effectiveness of each tool or reference certain cultures, but there are fundamental concepts and techniques that connect the arts. I think Bruce Lee called it the ribbons of truth, rather. But it's just the more you study, the more each art informs the other
Overlaps.
thing you
Yeah,
study.
right. Yeah.
And as you well know,
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, it's the human body only moves a certain direction. Your elbow's only going to bend one way, but it really depends on how you apply that. Whether you're applying it with one technique or another, that's really your own skill. And most people, when they've asked me what martial art should I take, I'm like, go and look at them all. Let's see which teacher you get to, because it's the same as you said. So I wasn't kind of there doing taekwondo because it wasn't my thing, right? So let's move on to some, and you find something else that now you've been doing for a long time and has made your career as well. It's helped you along your career. So I
well,
think
and go ahead.
no,
What I was
so
going
I
to say.
think those things. I think those things are important to understand. That you go by the teacher you can understand and teaches you the best. You can take five teachers and they say, and one of them says something different that you really connect with, and that's the one you really should go with.
No, absolutely. I just, I absolutely agree. You go and you shop. One of the things Dan and Sana used to say was absorb what is useful, that
Right.
recognize your strengths and continue to work on them, but also recognize areas of weakness that you may want to strengthen, but at the same time, you may not be suited to be doing jumping triple spin kicks,
Yeah.
so, and that's okay.
You
there,
know, it's
there's
funny
other
because
value.
I kind of liken that to what Duncan MacLeod in Highlander, obviously the character I played for a few years. What happened to him over 400 years? You know, the changes he went through and the styles of things he did. Eventually, he became the painting. He was at first painting with one color, and then another color comes in, and he's, oh, I'll try this. I'll try the broadsword. I'll try the saber. And all that stuff informs him to who he then became. And I think that's the same that happens in our lives. We get all those little things, all those paint colors create us into who we are. I mean, you've got horse skills, whipmaster skills, sword skills, all this stuff, martial arts skills. All that stuff is who Anthony DeLongis has now become.
Well, and you mentioned Duncan MacLeod, which I think is a very apt analogy. That one of the things that was fun, like when we first met and worked together, had such a good time in season 3 in Blackmail. I was watching you working with the katana, and you were using things that were both, two-handed Japanese sword katana based, and also you had other elements and styles that would make sense for your character because he'd been exposed to so many things.
Mm.
And it was one of the things that I liked the best about when we did Duende. And you as a character made the choice to put the katana down and meet me, in my oh, what am I trying to say? In my
Arena.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But you came to my area of
Right.
strength, which just made you that much more heroic. But it also was kind of like, oh, well, and Richie says, well, I've been practicing, I'm better. And it says, well, maybe he has too.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
it was kind of fun because it really showed off the versatility, and the depth of your training, and the depth of life experience that Duncan MacLeod has.
A lot of people do ask me what was one of the most interesting fights or the ones that and I always talk about Duende because technically it was a challenging fight going from primarily a single-handed two-handed single weapon to two weapons and two-handed, and I really enjoyed the two weapons. That's kind of, I think, got me really interested in two weapons when we first did that. But the other portion of that was actually the rehearsal time we had when we were doing it, or the non-rehearsal time
I
we
was going to
had.
say, you mean there was a time we didn't have?
Yeah, and what was really interesting about that, many people talk about that show, and but all the things that were behind it that eventually made it successful that you wouldn't have expected when you first read the script. You go, okay, the script is good, but the things such as the rain pouring down at the end when we were doing the fight, and I remember you slipped and went down at one point when we were doing it because
Oh, it was
we
a
were
million
wearing
dollar
bloody.
production value.
It
Yeah.
was it was. I mean, all those things that you can't really foresee. You
Well,
know, the
there's
non-rehearsal and all that stuff is interesting.
there's that there's that horse you were talking about. That, but no, and I don't know if I think people should know by now, but literally the first fight that we put together, um, I, I I remember Braun and I kind of made it up at night and felt like a cloakroom or something. And we kind of showed it to you the next day. And the only reason we had half an hour rehearsal was because the camera truck had broke down. That was when we were shooting at
I forgot
for the art
that.
the art school. And then the next one, we were in the school, and I was in these boots that were like fireman's galoshes. They didn't fit me at all, and we were on the mysterious circle that
Circle, yeah.
I had introduced, and that was the first time that was ever on film. We introduced that unique Spanish style, which was very exciting, and because we're always at Swords Point, which is also makes it enormously filming.
Yes,
But we
right.
did this, and and Braun said he threw some coke on the floor,
I
to make it.
remember that. Yeah, I remember he
Yeah,
threw
then
some.
he said,
But
please
it's not.
be sure that you put some sand on this and texture it because we're going to be outdoors, the next day. And we got outdoors and it's pissing down rain. We said we asked you to texture this, and they went, oh, we were going to, but it was raining. I was like, yeah, we know, thanks. But I don't know if you recall, but the last fight, which was of course the most complex, and the great payoff, you know, the climax. Um, you we were filming, and you'd said, I haven't seen this fight yet. Yeah, you were doing, you were in the day before when Braun and I were making it up and creating it. You were downstairs filming flamenco stuff, and you would run up onto the street, and we're like on the boulevard, which is like 6 feet from cars racing by, but there are these stanchions there, so you felt sort of safe, maybe kind of, you know, unless Remy Julien comes on along and is filming a car sequence. But we're doing this, and you would have to go, well, what have you got? And you would kind of, okay. Then you'd go back down and do some more, you know, the footwork with your flamenco dancing. So we went the night before we were shooting the climax, which was the final day, which, as you know, or people maybe not in the business don't know, if you don't shoot it, it's not in the show, you know. So we were really up against it. And you said, I haven't seen this fight yet. I'm stopping filming so that they can show me the fight. So we walked our way through the fight, like maybe twice. And then I went off to shoot the scene in the limousine. And we said, well, we'll rehearse on set the next day. Well, we get on set the next day, and it's raining, and there is no cover set. There is no place where we can go, you know. So we basically just, you know, came out onto the circle and started going. And then they went, the light is really terrible. We shot for about an hour, said, to hell with this, we'll just wait till dark and then pump a bunch of light through it, which looks fantastic. I mean,
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. It looked like we've been fighting for hours because the light changed, and I'm like, how did that happen? You know.